Well, good afternoon, everybody. I am Dean Tully from the College of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences, and welcome. This is from the Frontlines, the effects of drug use, abuse, and overdose in Northwest Ohio. This event is sponsored by our college, by the Department of Justice Sciences, the College of Health Professions, and the College of Pharmacy. It's also part of a bigger series of events that we're kicking off for October. You may have seen some things announced in various ways, but this is the month where we celebrate arts and humanities in general, nationally. So it's part of a greater series of events. So look for those advertised in our Pulse media and through other email announcements, etc. So before I bring our guests up to introduce his team, I'd like to say a few words about Officer Trevor Johnson. I hope sets the tone for the discussion today, and it probably makes him the butt of jokes on a ride home, maybe. But we know this is a pervasive problem, and it's an all too serious issue, right? Illegal use, abuse, and overdose. I think it's important, particularly when discussing an issue as serious as this, to speak to the character of someone who works on the front lines. Doing so, I think, sets an ethos of seriousness, professionalism, and compassion that should be present when thinking about the ravages of addiction on our society. I met Trevor in 2001. At that time, I was faculty at Bowling Green State University, and I was chapter advisor for our fraternity, Pi Kappa Phi. He was a freshman at Bowling Green State University then. As a brand new freshman, I sensed an earnestness, respect, and confidence in him that was atypical of freshmen that I met. Particularly, I remember you showing up to a meeting, you were in a suit with a tie, like, who is this guy? Through the years, we talked occasionally, seeing each other at mutual events, but as is typical, you'll find out when you get older, you lose track, even with social media, of folks, good friends throughout your life. And we hadn't really seen each other until the summer. We touched base again at a mutual friend's house, and he started telling me more about what he did. And I said, well, I have an audience for you, a college audience that needs to hear what you do. I was amazed but not surprised, and immediately again saw that opportunity to bring him here. Realizing the problem is not going to be addressed by enforcement alone, he and his task force have asked to pursue a proactive path of education, and that's why we're here today. So today's talk is part of that implementation. Proud of you, my friend. Proud of the professional community leader, father I know you are. And I'm glad to see a person of integrity doing this difficult work, because it is difficult work. And on that note, Officer Trevor Johnson.
Wasn't because I tricked. How is everybody today? Are you excited to be here? Who's forced to be here? Blink twice. Oh, fair enough. So, my name is Trevor Johnson. I work for the Ottawa County Prosecutor's Office, and so does my partner Cheryl. We'll introduce them in a minute. We're assigned to the Drug Task Force, and I am in charge of the Drug Abuse Response Team. So you guys heard about the drug problem. We're going to go into a lot of different things. If you have questions, ask. We're kind of goons. I'm going to warn you right now. We're kind of goons, and you got to interact with us, because if you don't interact with us, I'm going to make this really awkward and uncomfortable. She's good. So, my friend Ron helped me update this, the title, From the Frontlines, the Effects of Drug Use, Abuse, and Overdose. Well, I'm going to be real with you guys. I do not like objective slides, so you're just going to have to buckle up and be surprised. If you're easily offended, you might want to find the door right now. We like to have fun. Ask questions, engage with us. We're here to have fun with the teach. Oh, real sensitive. It wasn't good. There we go. So a little bit about myself. I'm from Port Clinton, Ohio. Anybody ever hear of Put Bay? How many of you been to Put Bay? You've been to Port Clinton. Are you old enough to drink to go to Put Bay? Good answer. It's a small little county. We consider ourselves a rural county. We are right on the water. So I went to Bowling Green. I got a criminal justice degree. I've been a fireman since 2001 for a volunteer fire department. EMT since 2007. And I'm also on the SWAT team, as you can tell by my body. I'm the medic. I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to introduce Matt Gandy. You're going to turn on the microphone. I told you to hold the microphone. Oh, there it is. So Matt is the commander, mainly because he won the arm wrestling contest.
My name is Matt. I work for the Drug Task Force. I graduated from Harvard. I hired out of the Sheriff's Office in 2000 years. I got put on the road in 2014. Then I went back to school and got a bachelor's degree then. So I graduated with my bachelor's degree in criminal justice administration in 2017. Worked on the road for a few years and I got promoted to road sergeant. I left full sergeant position in 2019 to go to the task force. Trevor had that sweet picture of me when I was growing up. I don't know if it's still in there.
No, I took it out. I figured this is a professional setting.
I took over, I've been on the SWAT team since 2013. I took over as commander of that in like 2015 or 16. So I've been on our SWAT team for some time. Like I said, I went with the Drug Task Force in 2019. Currently enrolled at the University of Virginia pursuing my master's degree in public safety.
Where did you play football at?
I played football for the University of Phoenix. All-star quarterback. Trevor Johnson.
It's an online college. That's a joke.
You all knew what you guys over there. Do you know what the University of Phoenix was?
Oh
my God. It's gonna be a real long day for you guys.
Yeah. Now you got to introduce Garrett now.
That's me in a nutshell. Garrett started the task force like 72 hours ago, so we don't have much to offer. Period.
My name's Garrett Schling. I grew up in the Findlay area. I went to Arcadia High School. I went to Ohio State, got a bachelor's in criminal justice. Came back here and went to the police academy at Owens in Findlay. I took a job at the Ottawa County Sheriff's Office. My first year I got a police K-9, started working with these guys a little bit. Got promoted to road sergeant. And then I was there for 4 years, and then as of last week I started out here. So I don't really have much insight coming on the road.
Don't sell yourself short, Trevor. I think you're wonderful. So, just a little bit of foundation. Let's go over the Drug Task Force side of things. So, Drug Task Force, in a nutshell, we try to catch drug dealers. We're not after drug addicts. Sometimes it starts with drug addicts, but we try to find drug dealers and drug suppliers. So, Matt, give us a rundown of how we would cultivate a CI. Confidential informant. Snitches is the word, but we don't call them that. That's derogatory.
Snitches do not get stitches. That's a myth. Everybody snitches.
Everybody.
Somebody else you would snitch on, I promise you that. So just a little bit of background with the difference between the Drug Task Force. I mean, we obviously work hand in hand, but there is different objectives. With the DART team, we're more interested in recovery options versus Drug Task Force is more the enforcement side of things where we look to incarcerate people that prey on addiction. So a little bit about what we do with the Drug Task Force side of things. We use confidential informants quite a bit. There's multiple ways to cultivate an informant, whether it be someone that gets in trouble with drugs themselves, and oftentimes that's where Trevor kind of gets started with his role as well, whether it be from an overdose or a marked unit stops a car and somebody has user amounts of drugs or family member calls, whatever. If we find a user, oftentimes we will utilize information from them and then flip them to Trevor and get them linked up to services as well. But oftentimes, most of our informants come from someone that's been arrested for some sort of charge and they want to work their way out of trouble. Or the other way is to pay them. So I don't know if you guys, I know you're all broke college kids looking for a little walk-around money. My guess is you guys don't want to buy drugs so you can see me in class. We can pay you decent.
Well, the more you buy, the can go to neighboring counties and we can drive people. A lot of times the confidential informants that we're dealing with, they don't have driver's licenses because they lost them due to drug suspension and drug possession and things like that. So we have to drive them. They're not allowed to break the law to go buy drugs for us. So that's about the capacity that we do most of our undercover work. But every once in a while we'll get something in the mail and dress somebody as a UPS guy and deliver packages. Do you know who the biggest drug dealer in the nation is?
Other than doctors.
Who's the biggest drug dealer in the nation? It's the Postal Service. Did you know that? Teenagers. Don't get me started on them. But the Postal Service, FedEx, UPS, they're sending drugs in the mail. All kinds of drugs. They'll send meth by the pound. They'll send Perk 30s, the fake stamped fentanyl pills. We'll talk about those later. So we're going to talk about a little bit about this case right here. This is one of our earlier busts that Matt and I got to work on together. And do you see the white crystals? What do you think that is? Go ahead. It's meth. You guys ever see Breaking Bad? Yeah, everybody's seen Breaking Bad. So ours isn't blue. What you see in methamphetamine, it kind of looks like busting up. It's granulated crystal. So it started off with a confidential informant and introducing Matt as a comparator. The snitch introduced Matt to a bad guy that was selling meth. And then from there, Matt was able to do a couple other buys. We do 3 buys before we busted him. So the last buy we bought off of this guy and this girl, they went to the Dollar General across the street from where we were supposed to buy drugs. They bought bandanas and were thinking about robbing him. And lo and behold, we were all in the shadows, hiding like ninjas, trying to blend in at this gas station restaurant thing up by Davis Messe's. Anybody know the nuclear power plant? Up there, just on the road. And as soon as they thought better of robbing him, the drug transaction happened, and then everybody sprung out, the rest of them, and that guy's left holding a hot potato. Well, nobody wants to hold the hot potato, so guess what he did? He snitched. So the snitch, we followed that guy all day. We followed him.
On the day that we buy bus, it's shut down about between 5 bucks and 5 water.
Sure.
We mainly do buy ones. So it's not like what you see on TV where as soon as a drug deal happens, a big cops jump out and arrest people. More often than not, we let people walk away. And that's the game further intelligence to find out like where the source of supply is and things like that. So we did 2 or 3 buy walks with this guy where essentially I gave him money, he gave me drugs, and we both went our separate ways. But obviously he didn't know that we would have surveillance on him. So on the 4th buy, we had planned to do a buy bust. The reason we did that is because it was for a pretty substantial amount of money, and we weren't comfortable letting that much money walk away. We decided to do the buy bust, so we just followed him all day. We started in Mount Vernon, Ohio. I don't know if you guys are familiar where that's at. Started in Mount Vernon, followed him to Columbus, and then to Sandusky, and then to Ottawa County, where we ultimately met by Davis Bessie, where I think he was going to rob me.
People on meth have a lot of energy, and they're up for days. And this guy had this old ratty truck that he was just
Literally driving around 90 miles an hour everywhere. So.
yeah. And this guy's on the road. And ultimately, we followed him back up to Ottawa County, and we busted him. So that led to him wanting to flip on the guy that we followed. We followed him into Columbus. Is anybody from Columbus? Oh, fair enough. You ever heard of Linden? Linden?
We live on Aberdeen Drive.
Yeah, this guy's from Linden. And Linden's the hood down in, one of the hoods down in Columbus. And ultimately that led to more methamphetamine. So we got that guy's loop. We got more methamphetamine. They call it CAHSS. They call it ice. And then we got a gun. You can't tell that there's a gun there because Big Dummy took a picture on the dark background of it. So that's okay.
I see it next to the bullet.
Okay. So, do you see that bag? It's about the size of my fist, that brown bag. So, that is heroin / fentanyl / carfentanil. And how do I know that? Look at that bag. Read the label on that bag. Is there a label on that bag? Do you know what's in there? Can't see the bag.
Pretty good one up there.
I'll give you a hint. There's no label on it. It's just in a bag. And the only reason why we know that it's heroin, fentanyl, and carfentanil is because we sent it to BCI. We sent it to the lab to have it tested. So, heroin, we know overdoses people. Fentanyl is more potent. Yeah, it's overdosing people. But carfentanil is, they're calling that the gray death, elephant fentanyl. They're saying that it's elephant medicine and it's dosed for an elephant, basically. Should people take elephant medicine? Why not? Help me out here. Why shouldn't people take elephant medicine? Because elephants are way bigger. It's not dosed for people. And that bag, about the size of my fist, it's actually a little smaller than the size of my fist. If every seat in this room was filled up, just a couple granules of that with each person is enough to kill you. You can't see that when it's in that bag, can you? You don't know what you're getting. You don't know what the drug dealer's selling you. What does the drug dealer care about? Money. That's the only thing that the drug dealer cares about. They only care about money. And we're going to get into another slide here in a little bit to show you how people are mixing your drugs. Everybody's saying, oh, they laced my weed. Well, I'm going to show you a picture of like, well, they're not necessarily intentionally doing it, but there's cross-contamination going on. Next slide for me, Hunter, would you?
I do want to touch on one quick
Oh, sorry.
one picture of the fentanyl, the carfentanil, like, just so it's easy for you guys to understand. Like, do you guys ever mess with a measuring system here? Do you guys know what a gram looks like? If you pour out, you open up a sweet milk bag and pour out the table, that's 1 gram. So if you take 3 granules of that out, like that is considered a lethal dose of fentanyl. So carfentanil is even less than that. So something you can barely even see to someone that doesn't do drugs often, like 3 granules is enough to kill you. So when you put it in perspective of how much was in that bag there, would that definitely kill everybody in the school.
Like, think about it. Like, you take a pinch of that stuff and throw it in that bag, and then you mix it around. Are you going to know what's in there? You have no idea. And these backyard chemists, they have no idea what's inside of there. They don't know what's going to be the hot load. And chances are, sometimes they just give you drywall dust because drug dealers have a tendency to hurt you out too. So, next slide, please. So we do like to get their guns, their drugs, and their loot. That's what we really, especially when we go off the street. So this is from one of our nicer areas. Anybody ever been to Marblehead, Kelly's Island, the lighthouse? Yeah, this was out there. And that is one huge weed plant. That is one. This guy was good. I think that everybody, including the BCI guys, were super impressed by how big this guy's plant was. So we're not the weed police. I'm not going to say that we don't bust weed, because the car that Matt actually drives is because of a major weed bust. We ordered up weed with a stitch, and he brought, like, you know the big Menards bags, like where you throw all your yard waste in? We got one of those full of weed once. 2 of those full of weed. It was 40 pounds. That was pretty impressive. So we seized that guy's car, and we seized his weed. I don't think we got any money out of that one, did we?
No, that one we ordered up $40,000 worth of weed in Nashville, and he brought it to us from Michigan, and we stopped him and took his car, and
Yeah, he had a pound of butter.
yeah, a pound of like THC concentrate where he had made his own like hash bags or hash oil.
So it's never just weed. So I'll give you, for instance, in Oak Harbor, it's a rural area. A farmer was driving his tractor along, and he looks over, he sees this real crappy house with this really nice privacy fence. And he looks over the fence because his sprayer sits up high, and he sees that this guy's growing weed in his backyard. So what ended up happening was they called the sheriff's office, and then they called Matt, and Matt goes out to this tractor with this farmer, and lo and behold, there's weed plants. Matt gets a search warrant, and then we go smash the door. There's, what, which is always a good sign because that means that they're moving a lot of loot. They had bags full of other prescription pills, and which probably were off the street. They probably weren't necessarily from a prescription doctor, or a doctor, but like they could have been Xannies or they could have been real Xannies. I really don't know. $38,000 in cash, and the kids were sleeping on filthy mattresses, and the house stunk worse than a dumpster outside. So.
That guy had about 75 pounds of weed in his house, a process, and marijuana, he had a bunch of plants, and he was making. So what sent this guy to prison was the fact that he was manufacturing like hatchways. It was super dangerous to do that, and he just rented, like you ever seen them storage pods, that say pods on the side of it. He had just rented one of those and had it outside. It was accessible to his kids. I'm not going to teach you how to do it, but it's super dangerous on how to make the wax. It could really explode anytime. So the kids had access to that. The other thing that really set me back was in the bedroom. Like the house was big, but they didn't sleep in their own room. They all slept in the pantry. But basically, they just had a bunch of like the whole floor of the parents' bedroom was mattresses. They just had a bunch of mattresses laid out. And the dad had like a loaded pistol right next to he was hidden in the closet, but the kids were right next to that too. Like they could just run the closet and grab the pistol. So that's what really set it back. But
Yeah. Next slide, please. So this was a big deal. This started off in the small little village of Oak Harbor. What is there, 3,500 people in Oak Harbor-ish? Very small place. The local community market, and it started off with an informant that was doing something that he shouldn't have been doing. Ultimately, we had that informant buying drugs off of a guy in Fremont. Anybody know where Fremont is? As we like to call it, Fremont. That's where a lot of our drugs come from in Ottawa County, a lot of our drugs. And we did a couple hits off of this guy. He actually had a taco truck and a house. We bought some drugs out of the house, and we watched several drug deals go out of the taco truck. And when we smashed his door, one team went to the house, and we found 4.5 kilos of cocaine and $58,000-ish. Yeah, a lot of money. So what's crazy about that is that, do you see that block at the top, the big rectangle? That is a kilo with a cartel stamp on it. This guy was connected. Fremont, or Findlay for that matter, seems like it's a long way from Mexico, doesn't it? But this was in our backyard. And I guarantee you that running up and down I-75 at any given moment, you can absolutely have loads of drugs coming up and down our highway. The two on the side, why don't you explain the reroute?
to touch a little bit on the dudes connected to the cartel, we can talk about this now since about the other case. The guy's name was Jose Ortiz. His mom got caught in the 80s and 90s body packing money for the Mexican cartel, for the Jalisco Mexican cartel, across the border, where she was basically lining her body with money and putting clothes over it. She got caught by Border Patrol, transporting money back and forth to the cartel. I'm assuming that's where his connection came from. But he was pretty connected, so what had happened was he was buying a kilo of cocaine roughly. It's about 30 grand for 1 kilo. A kilo is 2.2 pounds. There's 1,000 grams in it. Jose was a pretty significant drug dealer. He didn't really mess around with grams. He messed with, like, if you look at the bottom bag where it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 individual bags, like he would sell basically 9 ounces at a time. But he was selling those for roughly 12,000-ish. We got lucky. He knew our snitch. He was friends with him, so he was selling him smaller amounts. But anyway, the reroute. Essentially, what's happening is he's buying kilos from the cartel directly from Mexico, and I would rate those at about 80 to 90% pure cocaine. So then with that, imagine having 90% pure cocaine, 2.2 pounds of it. As a business person, you want to make the most amount of money as possible, right? So you double it. So essentially, you would take that 90% pure cocaine and mix it with anything, Metamucil, creatine, baby formula, any powder, essentially, and any body powder, and double it. So substance to it. So now you can basically double your money, the $30,000 he was paying. He didn't gram it out, but somebody called the phone, do me a favor. We're going to see how much money roughly he would make. So do 16. Do 16 times 2. Now, times that by 1,200. Times that by, double that. So that's roughly what he would have made off, $76,000 off of re-rocking his dope. So essentially, he's mixing his dope with whatever, repressing it into a brick. And that's why you have those two separate bricks there, is because he re-rocked it with the head.
But then as it goes down, you know, if you break it down to a gram, what are we going to gram of cocaine for?
Street value for a gram of cocaine. I actually like.
I'm not condoning drug trafficking. It's very lucrative. I promise you, people tell, and like you would never get away with it. Pull your phone again. So do 2,000 times 150. So $300,000 is essentially what he could make if you were, like we pay about $150 for a gram of cocaine. So a sweet and low packet, depending on how connected you are, about $150 is roughly what a gram of cocaine would cost in Ottawa County.
If you bought a kilo from the cartel, you re-rocked it, you got 2 kilos, and then you sell it for 150 grams, $150 a gram. There's a lot of money in it, but they obviously pass through several hands, and ultimately, when he re-rocks it, he sells it to another guy, and then that guy, he cuts it and re-rocks it, and then by the time they get to like the street level addicts, they're mixing anything and everything in it, because the addict is often trying to take some of those drugs to get high with it, and then they try to, you know, if you bought a gram, I'll take half of that for myself, and I'm going to add a half a gram of crap to it. And if you get ripped off, who are you going to call? You going to call the cops? I sold you crap drugs. What are you going to do, call the police? Why not? Because you were buying drugs. So there's little recourse if you get ripped off when you're buying drugs. I do like watching the YouTubes of when people call the police because they got sold bad drugs. So next slide, Hunter. So we're going to get into a little bit about opiates and opioids. So this is the CDC's definition of opiates versus opioids. So although the terms are used often interchangeably, they are different. And the CDC's definition just isn't very good. So opiates are more the natural version of the plant that come from like the opium poppies and that type of stuff. And opioids refer to the synthetic stuff that's made in the labs. That's the most simple version that I can give you. Next slide, please. So why are we talking about this? Why do we have a drug abuse response team? Well, people were overdosing. Families are affected. You probably know somebody that was raised by a family member because their parents had mental health or chemical dependency issues, whether it's at church or sports or in school. It happens, and families are definitely impacted. Well, since you're in the front row, we'll pick on you. Let's pretend that I'm your dad and I'm addicted to heroin. Do you think that, first off, what's your name? Alexa? Well, that's got to be confusing around the house.
Yep.
So,
We got one in our dorm.
oh, wow.
Can't say her name.
You can't say her name? Wow. We'll have to come back to that one. But anyways, Alexa, if I'm your dad and I'm addicted to drugs and you were a freshman in high school, I wake up in the morning, if I'm addicted to drugs, I'm dope sick. I feel like I have the stomach flu. I got the body aches, I have headaches, nausea, vomiting. Imagine waking up in the morning with the stomach flu because I didn't have my drugs. Do you think that, as your father, do you think I wake you up for school to get on the bus on time, that you have food in your refrigerator, that you have clean clothes, am I meeting your needs? And how would that make you feel if I'm not meeting your needs?
I'd leave.
Bad, you'd leave?
Yeah.
Well, sometimes kids do. What happens at school? Like those kids are they're labeled the bad kids at school. A lot of them act out because they're not getting any attention at home. and they get a lot of negative one-on-one attention from the principal, and they have a whole slew of problems. They end up on juvenile probation, and then here comes a whole nother generation of this cyclical drug addiction, broken family, and drug abuse. Now let's switch it around. Let's pretend that you're the mom and I'm the 18-year-old senior and I'm addicted to heroin. How does that make you feel as a parent? Like you failed. How would it make you feel? You got to give me something new. Would you be disappointed?
Yeah.
Why?
Because I feel like I wouldn't raise my son like that, and then he got into that himself.
Right. How are your parents raising you? What do they want for you?
The best.
The best. Is that what you expected for your child? Was drug addiction and jail and who would worry? Let's work this side. Who would worry? What would you worry about? Well, your safety for one, because they're probably going to steal your stuff and they're going to bring people around. They're hanging around with other criminals, right? So you definitely have to worry about that. And if they're not around, you kicked them out of the house or whatever like that, they're hanging out in what kind of neighborhoods? Bad neighborhoods. You got to worry about them overdosing. You got to worry about them getting them robbed. You got to worry. It's the strangest thing. Sometimes parents are like, "Oh, thank God they're in jail." Then they don't have to worry about their safety for that night. But that sounds crazy to happen. So, and there's embarrassment, disappointment, that type of stuff that all comes with it. Next slide, please. All right, we're going to talk about the epidemic. One more slide. So how did this opiate epidemic start? So, well, this is our best synopsis of it. You guys are how old? What year were you guys born? 02. We're feeling pretty old here.
Show to watch.
Yeah, go ahead.
Watch Dope Sick. Watch Dope Sick on Netflix, and that will explain literally how this started to a T.
Yeah. So what was happening is that there were doctors, I'm not saying all doctors, there were doctors that underestimated the addictiveness of opiates and opioids. And you can watch clips on 60 Minutes and YouTube the old clips of these doctors like, we've got these wonderful drugs, they're not addictive. Wrong, they were dead wrong. And I'll give you a scenario. Let's pretend in 2005 I had a back surgery. The back surgery, pretty serious surgery. The doctor gave me 120 Percocets, which was not unusual for that time. And they gave me, the doctor said, take 4 of them a day and come back and see me in 30 days. You take something 4 times a day for 30 days, guess what? Your body's going to get used to it, right? Okay, we go to the doctor. He checks out your back. Your back's healed. Is he going to give you more drugs? No. Okay, no. Why not? Okay. Well, now what? I'm addicted to drugs. What am I doing? Okay, I could fake injury. Yeah, that happened. Okay, he figures me out. Then what do I do? Go somewhere else. You go to Blanchard Valley this week, and then you make the trip up to Toledo into Wood County Hospital, and you go to St. Bees and St. Charles, and that was something that was called doctor shopping. That happened quite a bit. The government, being the big, dumb, slow animal that it is sometimes, it caught on and said, we should probably do something about this, and they created a database called ORS, Ohio Automated Prescription RX Reporting System. So let's say that Alexa broke her ankle on Monday, went to the hospital, went to Blanchard Valley, and they gave her a week's worth of Vicodin. They're going to enter her name into the database, and they're going to say what she got, how long she got it for, and send her on her way. Well, if she's trying to doctor shop and she goes up to Wood County Hospital, and she shows up on Tuesday and says, hey, I broke my ankle, can you give me something for the pain? They're going to pull up her name, and they're going to see that she already had a prescription for drugs, and then now she can't get any more drugs. That really put a hurting on people doctor shopping. They couldn't go to this doctor and that doctor because they They were checking them all the time. So you had all these people that were flooded with pills from their doctors previously, but then when they instituted this system, it cut the pills way, 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 way back. So the supply of the pills is down, but the demand is extremely high. So what happens when the demand's high and the supply is low? What happens to the price? It goes up. It goes way up. Pills were so expensive that people needed to find an alternative to still get high. They were addicted. They still needed to get high. They had to find something else in the opiate and opioid family. So do you know what they ended up switching to? Something that was unregulated, something that was illegal, something that was a Schedule 1. You know what they switched to? Heroin. Heroin. Heroin, Percocet, morphine, Vicodin, fentanyl, they're all in that same family of the opiates, opioids. So if you're addicted to fentanyl, you could take a Percocet or a Suboxone to try to help you from being dope sick. But when you were taking prescription pills, you knew what you were getting. They were dosed. When they came from the doctor, when they came from the pharmacy, you knew exactly what you were getting. But when they switched to heroin, they were getting a little baggie that had powder in it that was coming from God knows who and how many different hands it passed through. And that's when overdoses went through the roof. Because you didn't know what you were getting. That little baggie, remember the baggie I showed you? There's no label on it. There's no dosage on it. There's no ingredients on it. You have no clue what's inside of your drugs. So that's where overdoses especially took off. So some of our worst numbers were like 2015, 2016. Then we saw this nice little lull, like where everything was doing a little bit better. I was like, wow, we're making a difference here. Well then, bang, in 2022, we had a spike. We went from we basically doubled our numbers in overdose deaths in 2022. Does anybody know why?
Talking about from the previous year?
Yeah.
Probably coming out of COVID.
But they switched to fentanyl. Fentanyl is a lot cheaper to manufacture. With heroin, you got to grow a plant. You got to process a plant. It only grows in certain places in the planet. It takes somebody to grow it, and I can't save a plant and grow a plant myself. But what they realize is that you can get chemicals from China, from India, send it to Mexico, manufacture it there, and then ship it to America. And it was a lot cheaper. So you hear a lot about fentanyl. There's good fentanyl and there's bad fentanyl. The good fentanyl is the stuff, the medical grade stuff that they give you for surgeries. I'll give you, for instance, we had a guy, Christmas 2 years ago, when I was running EMS. Well, I was on the fire truck, but it was a car crash. This guy he T-boned a lady because she pulled out in front of him, and he had a compound fracture of his tib-fib. Means his shin bone is sticking out through the skin, screaming in pain, screaming in pain. We dose him up with a little bit of the good fentanyl, and he can now talk, and he can answer our questions. He was still hurting, but he wasn't 100 out of 10 on the pain scale. He was about an 8 out of 10. So that's a good use of fentanyl, right? And the other good thing is with fentanyl in the medical facility, we buy it on the bus. We'll buy one little vial about that big for 52 cents. So the cartels caught on to how wonderful fentanyl was and how cheap it was to make, and they could make their own stuff, and they could sell the fentanyl at heroin prices. So from a business model, they made a ton of money by not having, do you want to elaborate?
Not even just that, like, again, Trevor mentioned, like, the U.S. government's kind of a big dumb animal. What we saw with the fentanyl, too, was when the labs were making it, they hired chemists just the same, right? So chemists were changing one molecule in fentanyl. And so now there's probably 150, 200 analogs of fentanyl. So what they were doing was the Chinese and the Mexican cartels were smarter than our government, and they were creating essentially a new fentanyl that wasn't a controlled substance. So for a time, the drugs they were selling weren't illegal because they weren't a controlled substance in the U.S. government. So between COVID and all of these new analogs that were being pushed out because they're smarter than our government, they were selling a product that was overdosing people that wasn't even illegal for them to sell. So they were able to stay ahead of like our laws and really push this product out. And Trevor, I wanted you to talk a little bit about when coming out of COVID or even in COVID, another reason we had so many overdoses was because some of the addicts weren't receiving that in-person treatment that they had been receiving. So why don't you talk a little bit about that?
So one of the big things that really helped us get our numbers down and under control, especially at the local level, is that we were linking people to services right away. In-person services. And when COVID happened, social distancing happened. That meant that the appointments that they were going to, they couldn't do that anymore. The 12-step programming, like the AAs and NA meetings that they were going to, you couldn't go to the churches anymore because they shut everything down. So that meant their support network was gone. Their counseling was gone. They started falling back into depression, and they started falling back into old habits, and then they started using. And not to mention, the government gave stimulus checks around our office. We called it the re-up money. And there was a lot of people that spent their stimulus checks on drugs. So, go ahead.
The availability of drugs also diminished some with COVID. So yet again, like the cartels that controlled the flow of drugs were able to charge even more money. So they were able to make more money off of less drugs. And with the fentanyl, or the different analogs of fentanyl, I think that's when we locally really started to notice a push in the stamped fentanyl tablets. Trevor was talking about how with prescription drugs, and if you guys watch Dope Sick, when Purdue Pharma pushed out all the Oxycontin tablets, people started to produce basically knockoff 30 milligram Percocet pills.
We'll show them here.
Oxycontin tablets.
Cool. We're going to just touch on this one here. Next slide, please, Hunter. Gateway drugs. I generally do a scenario, but I got a couple other things that I want to touch on. We spent a lot of time in middle schools, and in 6th grade, I'll ask the kids in the class, well, how many of you know somebody that has experimented with gateway drugs at your age? Drinking, smoking, vaping. A couple of the kids in the class raise their hand. By the time we hit 7th grade, I ask them the same question, and then half of the class has their hand up, and then by the time that you hit the 8th grade, everybody's got their hand up. Do you know what the #1 killer drug is in America? It's alcohol. So being on a college campus, I find it important to point out, can you overdose from alcohol? Absolutely can. If you throw up, you have alcohol poisoning. Your body is throwing up because it is rejecting it. It doesn't want it in there. So one of the worst things that you could do on a college campus is the old puke and rally. What's the puke and rally? Throwing up and then drinking some more. So when you throw up, your stomach, the food that was in your stomach, you have nothing else to absorb that alcohol anymore. And then you're basically doubling whatever your blood alcohol content was. It is one of the dumbest things that you can do. So we generally do, with the younger kids, we do a scenario about peer pressure because people aren't practicing peer pressure. Like, nobody is letting these kids know that they need to be ready for it. We practice tornado drills, don't we? You practice tornado drills? Do you practice fire drills? What are the chances of a tornado hitting here? High or low?
Pretty low.
Low. What are the chances that a fire is going to happen here? High or low? Pretty low. What's the probability that peer pressure is going to happen to you or anybody? What are the chances that peer pressure is going to happen? 100%. 100%. And I'm not just talking with drugs and alcohol. That's where generally my foot gets in the door. But we also talk about, peer pressure with the younger kids. We talk to them about sexting and sending pictures of your butts. And they ain't sending their butts, they're sending everything. Pretty awkward and uncomfortable, right? But a lot of times there's peer pressure situations that these kids are put into, and we're not practicing, and we're failing our kids if we are not practicing peer pressure with them, because the girl over there plays volleyball. She left already, I don't blame her. So, who plays sports? What do you play? Wrestling. Do you just show up at a match and be like, I think I could wing this. I haven't practiced at all, but I think I got this. What do you do all week? You probably train all year, don't you? Yeah. So you don't just show up and wing it. You have a plan, you practice, and you probably scout, and you're ready for it, right? So how would you like to show up on the day that peer pressure happens to you, and figure out whether you're going to react the right way or not? So, if you've got younger siblings or anything like that, I'm telling you, practice with them. And don't be afraid to tell somebody no. Tell them no. Kick rocks, pound sand, eat cobwebs. Whatever you got to tell them, get yourself out of that situation. Absolutely get yourself out of that situation. Next slide, please. All right, we're going to move into what happens during an overdose. But for time's sake, go to the video page, would you? Probably 3. One more. There you go. Play that, would you? This is a police officer. Oh, geez. There we go.
Sit down. Get in there.
A little more sound. This is a police officer that was on a traffic stop. She found a folded dollar bill, opened it, and the wind blew it into her face, and she ingested it. Do you hear the wind?
You get it once? 47.
Does that look like normal breathing?
Come on, Courtney. Hey,
So opiates and opioids suppress your respiratory system. They make it so your body does not want to breathe. And the Narcan is a reversal drug.
Get in. How you moving? Get in Andrew's bag. Get in Andrew's bag. You're good, Courtney. You're good.
She's breathing.
Hey, stay with me, okay?
You have it.
Breathe. Breathe.
Is that right?
Hey.
Did you hit her with both?
I know.
Did you give her 2?
I gave her both.
Okay.
No, yep, that's
Yep,
right.
roll for it.
So what you're going to see here next is that she's awake. She's talking. She's answering questions. But she's going to overdose again. Because fentanyl leaves your body at a faster rate than what the drugs that are in her system were. And it left at a rate to where she overdosed.
Okay.
Fucking chest hurts so bad.
Breathe. Deep. Inhale deep.
All right. So you're going to watch her body tone. You see how she's got some posture right now? And she's going to go limp here in just a second.
Tell them gonna kill somebody in minutes. I gotta try and call people in the middle of the night.
Now look at her.
Hey. Breathe. Come on, breathe. Hit her again. Rodney, she's not breathing. Hit her again.
Is he out again?
Yes.
47 County. 3 doses of Narcan.
Can they hurry?
Have you in that exercise, please?
Come on, Mark. There you go. About there.
That's pretty wild. Why do I show this video is because I'm sure people have heard about what happens during an overdose, but here is a perfect example, and it's not too graphic of what happens. Next slide, please. So what do you do in an overdose emergency? Well, first off, call 911. A lot of times people panic, and if they're hanging out with other drug users, they're worried about getting busted. They're worried about anything else other than doing the right thing sometimes. Call 911. Even if you're not positive that it's an overdose, It's better to be safe than sorry. You will not get into trouble, and you've got protections under the Good Samaritan law. So call 911. We would rather show up and be like, oh, no, it's not, but that's okay. That's what we'll tell you. So once you call 911, follow the directions of the emergency dispatcher. Is anybody certified in CPR here? Great. I would encourage everybody to be certified in CPR here because the chances of something happening are, to a loved one, you pulling up on an accident, eating in the cafeteria, people choking. Do you know what to do if somebody's choking? Some of you do, some of you don't. Just practice, be ready for it, get certified. And if you're in a criminal justice or a healthcare field, you're definitely going to need it. So administer Narcan if available. Next slide, please. So Narcan is a reversal agent. I'm sure you guys heard a lot about Narcan. It's super accessible. Narcan is a nasal spray. You saw how they put that nasal spray up that lady's nose, and they push the button. They push that button, and it sprays a mist. That mist goes into your nose, and there's a membrane in your nose. It acts like a sponge. It absorbs the medicine, and then it circulates through your body, as long as you have a heartbeat. That's my disclaimer. If you give somebody Narcan and their heart is not beating, what do you got to do? CPR. I'm going to tell you from my past experiences, if you're doing CPR on somebody that you Narcaned, you are behind the 8 ball, and their chances of survival are rapidly decreasing. So, but if somebody is still gasping, if somebody's still breathing, you still have time to give them Narcan. So stick it up their nose, push the button, and that's the best thing to do. Next slide, please. All right, about Narcan. It only works on opiate overdoses. It doesn't work on meth. It doesn't work on cocaine. It doesn't work on weed, alcohol, or any other kind of emergency. If you are unsure if you're witnessing an overdose, give them the Narcan anyways. You can't hurt them. Narcan's been approved by the FDA since like 1973. There hasn't been one negative side effect from Narcan. Nobody's ever woke up and said, oh, I'm allergic to that. Well, I'm going to assure you, if you don't give them the Narcan, they're not going to wake up to say, I'm allergic to that. So it never happens like that. I could Narcan you guys right now, and you're not going to have any bad effect from it. So I'll give you, for instance, I run EMS, and if we had a little old lady that was down in her front yard and unresponsive, well, we go through a couple different things that we try to check. We'll check her sugar to see, maybe she's diabetic and she's in a diabetic low. But we'll give her Narcan too because we know it won't hurt her, and you never know. You can't judge a book by its cover, right? How do you know that grandma's not addicted to pills from her hip surgery that she had? And the other thing is that sometimes old people get confused. What if she took her nighttime and her daytime medicine all at once and she weighs 80 pounds? So, if you're not going to hurt them, give it to them. Let them have it. Next slide, please. How do you get Narcan? Well, fun thing, I brought quite a bit of Narcan. I might not have enough for everybody, but I'll find a way to get it. Go to your health department. Go to your, chief?
We have it in our office.
Fantastic. So it's accessible, and it's super easy to use. I just taught you how to use Narcan. Stick it up the nose, push the button. You need to wait 2 to 5 minutes. Gives it the opportunity to absorb and circulate through your body. But this is how we generally spend a lot of time in Ottawa County. But go to your health department, go to your campus police station, get Narcan, have it. Especially if you're going to be working in the health field, you're going to be doing clinicals at hospitals, you're going to be doing ride-alongs with police departments or anything like that. Just have it. Be familiar with it. You're not going to get in trouble if you administer it. You're not going to hurt anybody. Go ahead. So there is an expiration date on it, but I'm going to tell you that they're telling us now that it's 18 months past the expiration date. If you Narcan somebody with an expired Narcan, I'm pretty sure they're not going to mind when they live. So give it to them. If it's all you got, give it to them. Don't be like, oh, well, it's expired, sorry. So that would be downright silly. Next slide, please. All right, so we talked about when Alexa was when I was Alexa's father, about this continuous cycle of how drug addicts have to supply their habit and they're dope sick. So opiate addicts have to maintain their drug habit or the addict will experience physical withdrawal symptoms. Next slide, please. Symptoms like agitation, anxiety, muscle aches, insomnia, sweating, yawning, abdominal cramping, diarrhea, dilated pupils, nausea, vomiting. So raise your hand if you've ever had the stomach flu. Throwing up, body hurts, headache. Please don't tell me about your diarrhea. I don't care. Can you go to school like that? Can you take care of siblings or your kids like that? Absolutely not. So there's only one of two ways that you could fix that issue. What do you think they are? We haven't worked this side of the room in a while, have we?
No.
Oh, fair enough. What are the two ways to get past dope sickness, do you think? What's your name? Courtney. What do you think they are? Taking more drugs. You are exactly right. You go get more drugs, and somebody that's really addicted, they generally tell us that it generally takes them 2 points, 0.2 of a gram to kind of maintain their way through the day so they don't get dope sick. When they wake up, they always make sure they have just a little bit on deck to make sure that they're not sick for the whole rest of the day until they can go buy more drugs.
Trevor, I'm going to interrupt you for a second.
Go ahead.
Like, remember when Trevor was talking about how it makes you feel like the worst stomach cold of your life? Imagine that every single day if you didn't get those drugs. If you're addicted to an opiate or an opioid, that's how you feel every single day if you're not taking that drug.
So every single day, you get drugs. And every single day, you're getting drugs from multiple people. You don't know exactly, you go to the store, right, to buy groceries. Do you just go to one store exclusively? Or do you go to Meijer and Walmart and Kroger? Well, that's kind of what these guys do. They go to multiple people because if this guy doesn't have what you need, then you got to go to this guy and go buy it. Well, you're playing Russian roulette with the dope that you're getting. You have no idea what's in your dope. And they're also criminals, and they're trying to rip you off, and you don't know where they got it from. You ever play remember the game Telephone that you used to play in kindergarten? We'd start a message down here, and then we would pass the message until it got to the other side of the room. Well, instead of a message, let's pretend that was your dope. By the time the dope passes through all these different hands, it's stepped on, it's tampered with. Would you want a pizza that was handled 16 different times delivered to your house? Why not? Yeah. So get more drugs. That was one way. And the other way is recovery. Not an easy process. Recovery is generally in the form of going to detox first, and detox is getting the toxins out of your body. So if you have headaches and muscle aches, what do they give you? What do you take for headaches? Ibuprofen. If you have anxiety, if you're nervous, if you are having issues calming down, they can give you something like Ativan. They can give you Xanax. They can give you stuff to help calm you down. They manage your symptoms in these detox facilities. And if you have nausea, heartburn, upset stomach, Pepto-Bismol, yeah, right? So, sorry. I am the king of karaoke at Lagoon Saloon, though. Once you get through detox, you got a long road past that. Because when you use drugs, did you know that if you take drugs, they mess with your brain? Crazy, right? Who'd have thought? So when you take drugs, certain drugs make you feel a certain way, but there's a center in your brain, pushes that button, and then it lets all the feel-good stuff loose. A lot more of it, that's what's supposed to be going loose into your body. And that's why they say when you smoke crack for the first time, they say it's the greatest high that you'll ever have. I had this guy named Robin. I asked Robin, this guy was the worst of the worst in the trailer park. I said, Robin, why do you keep smoking crack? He said, it's an orgasm of the mind. And I was like, well, hell, who can argue with that? So, but ultimately, that guy's first high was never as good as the other ones. And he kept chasing it, wasting his money, and he lived that way for a long time until ultimately he did a lot of physical damage to his body, but he got into a recovery program which was addressing his mental health. I will tell you that 100% of people that I deal with in addiction have mental health problems. Depression, anxiety, PTSD, and not just the biggies like bipolar and schizophrenia, but more often than not, it's like family issues, environmental issues. There's a whole host of different reasons why people end up on drugs. So, but the success rate is not really good. I realize that when I try to provide linkage to people to get them into recovery, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. You know, or like the girls, I can fix him. I can fix him. Wrong. So next slide, please. So this is what I was telling you about with the brain function. So everybody here, we're all college students and smart academics. You're using that frontal lobe. You're using the frontal lobe, and that's where complex thoughts, problem solving, strategy, that's all in the front. But when you keep on racking your brain like a slot machine, you keep putting that quarter in and racking the brain, and all the feel-good lights come on, you keep racking the brain and racking the brain, you become extremely impulsive. And you don't have that forethought. You don't think ahead. You are worried about your next high. That is it. You don't care about your kids. Do you know how many times people have babies and are like, oh, this is going to fix everything? No, absolutely doesn't. And it's a real sad story, but it takes about 1.5 years to get somebody to get their brain wired back to and off of the addict's brain is what we call it. I like to use things like Vivitrol. It's a shot, kind of like the pregnancy shot. You take the shot and you can't get high that month, or it makes you very sick. There's all kinds of different other methods, harm reduction like Suboxone, methadone. But a long story short is Suboxone and methadone are opiates and opioids themselves. So you're managing their opiate addiction, and when they wake up in the morning and they're dope sick and they get Suboxone, at least it's not heroin. I'll give you that much. But it's kind of like treating a vodka addiction with beer. But at least you know that the beer that you're getting isn't laced with carfentanil, it's going to kill you. So I'll let you guys form your own opinions. I'm not here to tell anybody about what my opinions are on Suboxone or methadone, but recovery is just an extremely hard process. Be compassionate is the biggest thing that I can tell you. It is not easy. Be compassionate to the people that have loved ones that are in that situation. People say, why do you keep on Narcan-ing these people? Just let God sort them out. Well, that is someone to somebody. That is a mother, that is a brother, that is a son, a daughter, to somebody. That's why we keep doing it. So we have the medicine, take advantage of it. Next slide, please. Go one more. All right. I need a drink for this one. Talking too much. You're the best. So I'm going to tell you a story about a girl named Katie. Katie's a real person, and I was talking with Dean Tully to get her here today, but recovery is not perfect. Katie is a girl that ended up in human trafficking and heroin addiction at 18. She's probably 25 right now. So Katie, I asked her, how in the hell did you end up in human trafficking and heroin addiction? You're from Port Clinton. Nothing ever happens in Port Clinton. It's so boring. It's so boring. Nothing ever happens. You came from good family. You came from, you had everything, played sports. You're smart. You're pretty. Why? How in the world did this happen? I said, where did your problem even start? And she said, middle school. And just like that, middle school. I said, middle school? And she said, yeah, I struggled with anxiety. I struggled with depression. I struggled with fitting in. I struggled with sexuality. My parents were getting a divorce and a whole host of other problems. But I was checking off the box of just about every other kid in middle school, right? And my mind was blown. I was like, wow, that's where a problem started. So then she knew she had issues, but she just went through that rebellious phase and was hanging out with people. This is like the old peer pressure story. It sounds so stereotypical and made up, but it's not. She started off with drinking. Why drinking? Because drinking is so accessible. There's alcohol in your fridge. It's super accessible. Your parents probably have a liquor cabinet. That's how they got it. So she was hanging out with people that she thought made her feel good, and she gave in. She drank. And then by the time she's a freshman, she's vaping, smoking weed. And by the time she's 16, sophomore year, she ends up going to a party, and somebody introduced her to prescription meds, Percocets. And when they were drinking and, they were just kind of doing their thing, they're like, oh, it's no big deal. It's just a pill. First off, you don't snort your prescription medication. That's a fun fact. But they did that, and she loved how they made her feel. Because all the things that she was feeling and dealing with, all the issues that she had at home, all the issues that she had in life that were going on, she was screwing up. She got caught. I think she had an underage OVI at one point, was on probation, and she got hooked into Percocets. Remember when I told you Percocets got hard to get and they were really expensive? Well, then somebody introduced her to heroin, and then she was definitely off and running. So Katie, a girl named Jordan, drug dealer named James, and a guy named Harold were partying at one of our hoods, the apartment complex called Bay Meadows. You can look it up, fact check me. They were drinking and partying, and James sold everybody heroin, and everybody used. Harold starts overdosing, and nobody calls 911. Drug dealer James says, we got drugs here, we're not calling 911. Everybody grab an arm and a leg, and let's drag him out back. So that's what they did. They drug him out back. The next day, somebody found him dead. It didn't take very long to figure out who done it, because there's a big drag mark from the door to where he was. And Katie, Jordan, James all got arrested. And Katie's 18 years old at this point. So court is a long, long process. And while she got an attorney, the judge let her out on a bond. They said, come back when I tell you to, don't break the law, and we're going to drug screen you. Those are your rules for bond? She said, okie dokie, I promise. So the judge let her out. Well, quitting heroin is not that simple. And she went right back to using drugs. Well, she didn't show up for her drug screen, and ultimately a warrant went out for her arrest. And Port Clinton's a pretty small place to hide, and everybody knows you. So Katie ran to Toledo. Her parents would have turned her in if she'd have stuck around. Her friends would have turned her in if she'd have stuck around. So she was sitting at a 7-Eleven on the corner of, I want to say it's the one in Nebraska, but I always get them mixed up. It's Toledo. She's hungry, she's homeless, and she's dope sick. Can't go home. Guy pulls up in a van. True story, your tummy alarms are probably going off right now. I was like, oh, stranger danger. The guy said, what are you doing? She said, I'm hungry, I'm homeless, I'm dope sick, I don't have anywhere to go. And the guy's like, well, you can come crash with us. I'll give you a place to stay. I'll feed you. I can even get you dope. Jail? Be dope sick in jail. Or go with this guy, he gives me drugs. She went with this guy. She got in this guy's van, and he got her drugs, he got her a place to stay, and he gave her food. But there's no such thing as a free lunch in this world, is there? She didn't have a job. She didn't have any money. And he expected something from her. He expected sex. But it got worse, because shortly after getting there, she was locked in a room, and she was not free to go. It was human trafficking. She had to sleep with other men to make him money and was not free to go. He controlled her, controlled what she ate, and physically abusive, sexually abusive, emotionally abusive. 6 months of her life locked in some house in Toledo. So she started building up trust with this guy, and every once in a while he'd let her use her phone. Her family would call me crying all the time, and they wanted me to find her. I said, tell me where she's at, I'll go get her. Tell us where she's at. I will walk into the house and we will go get her. Katie would never say where she was at. And then eventually, I was tracking Katie down. I was blowing up her phone like a crazy ex-girlfriend, leaving messages all the time, trying to get her to call me back. And she would call me here, call me there. And then finally she called me around Christmas time and said that she's got the guy convinced that she's so bad on drugs to let her go to detox, get her off the hard drugs, and she can make more money for him that way, because then she's not using as much money in drugs. So the guy said, yeah. He let her out. And I asked Katie where she was. She wouldn't tell me. So I found her. I went and I started calling detox facilities, and I had a couple of fishing lines in the water. Figured out where she was, and I had her arrested in an hour. I drove to Toledo and I arrested her because I knew that that was the absolute best place for her, was out of human trafficking and into jail at that point. Her family was so relieved. We had a discussion on the way back. I said, Katie, you got a real fork in the road here. I said, you can go to jail, then prison. She's tied to a body. She's going to prison. No bones about that. I said, but after you get out of prison, what are you going to do? I said, you could take advantage of the programming that is put in front of you, or you can just go jailing and go right back to the same old crappy existence that you're living, and you're going to overdose and you're going to die. And believe it or not, she went hard into recovery. She doubled down on everything, and we sent her to a CBCF, which is basically it's treatment in prison, and she was like the MVP of that thing. She did some time. We let her out, and we put her on intensive probation, and we put her in a special docket, a drug court, and she nailed it. She did exceptionally well. Next slide, please. Girl in the middle is Katie. When I was telling you that story, is that what you expected? You probably expected neck tattoos and missing teeth, and that girl looks like she can sell real estate or work at a bank, doesn't she? So, she's a real person. We could call her right now. Her life is kind of an up and down roller coaster, but she still struggles with recovery. She struggles with mental health issues. She struggled with her sexuality to the point to where she was. She identifies as being a lesbian, but she's got a kid, and I just heard she got another one on the way. So, not sure how the math adds up on that one, but fair enough. So, I want to get into some other stuff, but I wanted to show you that this is a real person. I was trying to get her here today. She's not there right now. She's not ready for that. Like, it would have been a lot more powerful for you to hear her story from her and not some dude. But there's a picture of her. I think there's another one, isn't there, Hunter? Hit the next one. That's all right. Let's keep going. All right. This is the pretty plant that heroin comes from. Shifting gears a little bit. You guys ever see The Wizard of Oz? They're skipping to the Emerald City. They fall asleep. Actually, they passed out on them poppies. Next slide. Brown heroin, that's one form. You don't see that a whole lot anymore. Next slide. This was it, China white, which is basically all replaced with fentanyl. We've seen it in blue, we've seen it in pink, we've seen it in brown. Yeah, everything. Next slide, please. Next slide. This is black tar heroin. I bet you this is some of the older guys. Chief, you probably saw this back in the day. Black tar. We don't see a lot of this. We saw this early, but you don't see. This is one of the lesser forms of heroin use. Next slide. Keep going. These are some of the street terms. If you hear somebody talking about black tar, well, that's that sticky stuff. You hear somebody talking about smack or dog food or H or slow, they're talking about heroin or fentanyl. Okay? Dirty 30s. Next slide. That's what Matt's talking about. Go ahead, Matt.
Those blue pills are what was killing everybody. So if you remember back to when we started talking about it, like at the height of COVID, that's when we really started seeing those blue pills. And those are, they're being stamped, and you can pretty much buy everything you need on Amazon to make that, other than the drug itself. You can buy just the pill press. You can buy people will buy the stamp for it on the black market or the dark web, whatever. But essentially, people started firing these off left and right. And is the next one Clayton's house?
Yeah, next one, please.
So I wanted to talk about that a little bit. This is from a house that we hit in Fremont where, like, if you look, that's a pill press. And if you just look at the stand, there's powder all over. So essentially what happens is Trevor's talked a lot about, like, quality control. And drugs that are made by the pharmacy are obviously microdosed. It's controlled, right? You know what you're getting. With this dude, you got no idea. You're just taking his word for it. So a lot of times what happens, I'm actually going to talk about two cases here. The first case is you're just kind of taking the word for who you're buying drugs from, that's what you're getting. And we worked a case not long ago where it was a double overdose death where two friends died on top of each other when they thought they were snorting cocaine, but it was cocaine that had fentanyl in it. And here's how it happens, is literal instances like this where this dude is making those pills. He's buying what he thinks is fentanyl from a drug dealer, but he's an opportunistic businessman, right? He sells drugs, whatever he can get his hands on, whatever people want, he'll find it. But he is weighing the drugs on the same scale as the fentanyl. So do you think that he would clean the scale or whatever devices he's used to packaging it? Do you think he cleans it between drugs? No. So you think you're going to go buy cocaine, but you're buying what is maybe cocaine that he's put on a scale that had fentanyl on it, or used a spoon to pull it out of a bag that had cocaine or that had fentanyl on it. Or maybe he's just cutting it with something that he thinks isn't fentanyl, but it has fentanyl in it, and that's what's happening. So if we stick to this specifically to the making of those blue pills, what's happening is, if you, like, you guys know what a magic bullet is, or the Ninja or whatever. So what they're doing is literally putting drugs in a magic bullet cup, mixing it with their cut, putting some blue dye into it, mixing it up in the magic blender a few times, and then dosing it out. And they put it in the pill press, and they just start firing off those pills. So what happens is, when they make those pills, you don't really know how that fentanyl powder is mixed up in the magic bullet. So you might buy a pill that's nothing. You might buy a pill that's got a little bit of fentanyl in it, just enough to get you high. You might buy a pill that's all fentanyl, and it kills you. But these two took it, and nothing happens.
Well, think about if you have, like, a baby powder in a jar, and then you throw sand inside of that jar. Well, eventually that sand works its way around there. Well, the sand is heavier than the baby powder, and it works its way through that, and all this dummy is doing is zip, 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 and mixing it in there. But you don't know if you got a clump, or you got all baby powder, or if you got all fentanyl. You don't know what's inside of your drugs.
And when Trevor talked about, like, laced marijuana, again, it boils down to, if they weigh it on a scale that's got other drugs on it, now it's cross-contaminated, and you could be buying, like, it's never just weed either. I wanted to touch on that because we didn't really talk about it. I would put it at about 99% of the houses we hit we're not the weed police, right? We're not looking for marijuana unless it's by the literal truckload. But I'm here to tell you, in my experience as a cop, and I think these two can attest to it too, I have never been to a drug house that didn't have weed in it. Never. 99.9% of the time, if we're looking like methamphetamine, cocaine, fentanyl, heroin, there's always weed.
Yep.
So it's not
always
just
something
weed.
else.
And then there are times where that weed could be laced with other drugs on accident. Sometimes it's on purpose. They'll mix it with like PCP or MDMA on purpose. But it happens.
So I'm gonna have to tell you, he brought up MDMA. So Molly and ecstasy, it is not ecstasy. It is not MDMA.
It's meth.
It's meth. Because the methamphetamines is so easy to manufacture, and basically you're getting it meth in pill form. So if you're into the club scene, somebody says, oh, put this under your tongue. Don't do it. You're doing meth.
The last ones we got look like little hand grenades. They look like runts. I mean, they're pressed to look like anything, peace signs, whatever. But I promise you it's meth. Real MDMA, it exists, but it's few and far between.
Yeah, I would bet the money in my pocket that you are going to get methamphetamine. Actually, methamphetamine is the last part of MDMA, you know, so the MA is methamphetamine, but they're not going to take the time to run it through that, the rest of the process. You're getting stamped meth.
But back to the blue pills, like if you've seen the orange bowl there on the right, like he's got the different stamps for the pill press to stamp out the M block.
This guy was killing people. This without a doubt, this guy killed people in a garage in Fremont, Ohio. And I wouldn't doubt that drugs came this way via Fostoria and probably into Finley.
For sure. And
yep. You guys get the Dayton and the Toledo traffic. You're kind of in the middle.
I mean, 75 runs right through Finley, and that is one of the major drug corridors. I mean, if you think about it, it extends all the way to Florida, so it's a major, major, major drug corridor.
All right. Next slide, please. All right. I'm going to teach you how to shoot heroin. And the only reason why I'm going to teach you that is because that's the only way to understand what the pieces, the parts are to what you're seeing here. So this is an overdose death scene. And everybody recognizes the needle, the syringe. Where are the drugs? Where do you think the drugs are? Anybody want to take a guess? Go ahead.
The plastic bag.
That's a good guess. They're in the paper fold. See that little paper fold? That's how that's more often than not, that's how. Yeah, next to the hand lotion or whatever that is. That paper fold is a lot of times is how they give you the drugs. Sometimes they come in baggies, but a lot of times they don't even spend the money on the baggies and they just rip off of a corner of a receipt. We found them in lotto tickets. They'll put it in low denomination money. So you got to be extremely aware. If you find something with white powder on it, don't be handling it and then licking your fingers like you were at Frickers. I wouldn't advise that.
Side note with the fentanyl, obviously it's transdermal, can absorb through your skin. Don't use hand sanitizer to clean it. It's alcohol-based, it'll open up your pores and make it seep in more. Soap and water. So if you guys do touch something that's got powder on it, use soap and water just out of precaution, not hand sanitizer.
Flush, flush, flush. So they take the spoon and they put a little bit of water. There's a water bottle to the side. I had to crop this picture. They put a little bit of water in the spoon. They put the powder inside of the spoon, and then they have to heat the spoon. And the spoon is heated the same way you make Jell-O. You have to get the powder to dissolve, because you can't put powder into your veins. So you heat it up, you get it to dissolve, and they, in this instance, they took part of the filter off of the cotton ball, the cigarette, and they put it inside of there, and that's a filter. They stick the needle into that cotton ball, and then they draw the liquid up through that little filter there, and then they're ready to shoot heroin. So sometimes you'll find cotton balls, Q-tips, yeah. So if you ever, once you get out to, do shadows or ride-alongs or anything like that, if you see cigarettes that are missing chunks out of the filter, that your spidey senses should be tingling. Next slide, please. So scene safety, don't get tunnel vision. And remember, when you do get into your field, your crew always comes first. No matter what, if that person's dying in front of you, like if you can't make a safe save on that person, you guys absolutely come first. Always wear your PPE, gloves, If you've got eye protection, a mask is always a good idea. Do you think that if that lady had gloves and a mask on, do you think that she would have overdosed? Probably not, but who else would have thought that that would have happened like that? Next slide, please. Consider your conditions, your wind condition outside. Consider inside ventilation if you're inside and you come into contact with this stuff. Remain calm, have patience. Remember that a person under the influence, when you come into these situations in your future professions and your internships, remember, their brains aren't firing like yours. And don't pretend you're a horse whisperer and like, oh, I could fix you. I could fix you. Just like, come on, you come on, just get in the ambulance. They're not thinking like you. So you need to keep your distance. And don't have your hands in your pocket. You know, kind of have your hands out. But that's whether you're in a nurse, that's whether you're a cop or anything like that. You have to protect yourself and keep your distance because they are not on the same realm as you when they're on drugs. Do not agitate them. Your words absolutely can trigger bad reactions out of them. Your tone of voice, your demeanor, your body posture can absolutely have an effect on the person that you're dealing with. Next slide, please. Whatever you see, communicate with law enforcement. You're all on the same team. You guys are all going into the same business. You know, everybody kind of has, oh, it's the fuzz, you know, same team. If you want this person to get help and you truly, that's what you intend for them, communicate. Lastly, everything is a weapon. So keep your distance and make sure that you don't get stabbed with a pencil. Don't get, you know, keys, anything. They will grab you, they'll gouge you, whatever. Everything's a weapon. Next slide, please. Keep going. Let's get into, yeah. Mm-hmm. No, it's still there. All right. The eyes don't lie. We're going to hit this quick because I want to make sure that we leave questions, time for questions. And we also brought drugs. Has anybody ever held cocaine? Good answer. Yeah, good answer. We brought, it's a controlled setting. They're safely packaged and they're well inventoried. We want you to actually see it and get your hands on it and see what it looks like. And we'll describe it to you, but it's hard to do in a big room like this because sometimes things grow legs and we can't have dope grow legs. All right, constricted pupils. If you see the pinpoint pupils, that's generally indicative of like the opiates. Especially on an overdose, we look at somebody's eyes and see what they're doing. If their eyes aren't pinpoint anymore and they're overdosing, chances are they don't have a heartbeat at that moment, and you better start doing CPR on them. But look at their eyes. If you see eyes that are bloodshot and glassy like that, you've seen that in drunks, you've seen that in stoners, right? You've seen the eyes that are all baked and really dry. That's why they get Visine, right? And this last one, if their eyes are big and black like cartoon characters, methamphetamine, crack, that type of stuff. So pay attention to their eyes. Like, you know what's normal in somebody's eyes. And if they're not acting right and you think that something's up, look at their eyes and see. So next slide, please. We're going to show you some paraphernalia. What we have here is, that's off of a death scene on the left. That is, yeah. You see, that's one of those perk 30s. That's a dirty 30. The credit card, they use credit cards or they use bank cards or anything like that. They chop and they dice and they line up their lines, their rails. If you find cut straws, they call those tutors. Those are for snorting. Rolled up currency. If you find rolled up currency, that's generally a dead giveaway. Who stores their money like that? It's a pain in the ass anyways to unfold it. Like, nobody stores it like that. If it's folded up like that, chances are they're ripping lines with it. Next slide, please. I'll let you explain the baggies, Matt.
So, baggies oftentimes, like, I won't say that. Baggies oftentimes are indicative of trafficking or possession, especially when you find like tied up baggies or pieces of a tied up baggie. Like if you find a baggie knot, but there's nothing attached to it, like that was the top of a dope bag that somebody ripped off. probably 100% of the time. Oftentimes like Trevor already talked about that a little bit with the paper folds. People sell drugs out of baggies quite a bit. They'll buy the cheap sandwich baggies. Like at this day and age, I'm not certain that anyone uses the fold, like the ones that don't zip, they like fold over. I don't know if anyone uses those anymore to pack a lunch. Like I haven't seen that in a long time. So if you see those are normally people selling drugs out of them.
So if you find a sandwich bag that has the corner ripped off of it, and you just find the bag with the corner missing, that's generally indicative that that guy is trafficking. If you find the baggy corner and the rest of the bag is missing, or the knot,
drug user.
That is the drug user. So, look at what you're looking for. When we do trash pulls, it's not a very good, fun part of our job, but sometimes we suspect that drug use is going on at a house or drug dealing is going on at a house. We pull their garbage and then we sort through it. And we look for that stuff, and we try to find the evidence of it, and we do that a couple times, and then if we find enough of it, then we get a warrant, we smash the door. Who keeps their money like that? Nobody. Next slide, please. So mirrors, scales, if you find anything with white residue, that is generally indicative of drug usage, drug and trafficking to boot. If you find the butane torches, if you find spoons that are laying and they're discolored, they're burnt, or they kind of have that gasoline sheen, that rainbow kind of a sheen to them, that is indicative of drug usage. Next slide, please. Who has 10 cell phones? That is definitely indicative of drug usage and drug dealing, more so drug dealing. Guns. You look for the Suboxone wrappers. If they're on Suboxone, they're on the other stuff. A lot of times they get a prescription for the Suboxone, but then they prefer the other stuff. Like they'll trade Suboxones. It's like, well, I'll give you a couple Suboxones if you give me, heroin. And well, I'm sick this day. Can you float me this? Give you Suboxone later. But again, the nice thing about Suboxone is that at least it's dosed. You know what you're getting. It comes from a pharmacy. Next. This came from another overdose death scene. Well, actually, all of these did. That top left is a bindle. That is a folded piece of paper. And we found a guy dead in a car. This lady was on the right. She had, it was powder, is what she ended up dying from. Do you guys know what the bottom left is? Anybody recognize that cap? It's a medicine. It's Miralax. So for one of two reasons, this guy could have been cutting his drugs with Miralax to rip other people off, or he could have had opioid constipation, which is a real thing. So, sometimes the opiates would bind them up. Next slide, please. There's a meth stem. We're going to show you all that. Next slide. If you see security doors on places, shady-looking houses with security cameras all over them and extra measures of security, and nobody else has them in the neighborhood, that's a pretty good indicator.
This one in particular, the house itself was worth like 30 grand, and the dude had like 30 grand worth of security, so that was a blue's clue that he was doing something he shouldn't be doing when he lived in a dumpy house and had a whole lot of money in security.
It was fun. We took a Bearcat, which is like a SWAT vehicle, and we rammed it through his door. So that was and we actually raided this house twice, and we ripped the cameras off each time, and the cameras are back. This guy's doing a 5-year run on that gun. Did you see the black gun that he had? He was a weapons under disability, and he ended up just pleading to that, and just with his record alone, and he had a couple prison numbers anyways. So next slide, please. Okay. These aren't too bad, but these are graphic slides. I'm going to show you a couple bodies.
They're not blood and guts, but if it's
well, one of them is. Like,
if it's going to offend you,
no guts.
Feel free to step out.
If you're going into nursing, if you're going into criminal justice, it's not bad. And this is, I'd rather you learn in a controlled setting from us, anyways. So that's my disclaimer. It's nothing bad. Slide. I don't want to watch that one. Next. So remember when I showed you that picture of the dope and told you how to shoot heroin? Well, that guy's dead. That's how he died. At the table, that's exactly what was in front of him. You see how he had the cap full of water. See how he had the spoon and everything laid out. This guy was in recovery for quite a while. And then he stopped doing, if somebody has diabetes, they can't one day be like, I think I got this. I'm not taking insulin anymore because I got this. Well, this guy's medicine was his mental health medication. It was his counseling. It was his people, places, and things. It was a good job. And he stopped doing all that, and then he wound back up into heroin addiction. So when I showed you that picture, like, this is what happened. This guy, he bought drugs on a Friday. People noticed his car didn't move for a couple days. We found him like this on Monday, dead. Narcan will not work on super dead. Next slide. Remember when I showed you the picture with the burnt tin foil and the one pill, and the one pill was split? This is what a mother came home to. This was her son dead on the couch. She left for work, worked at the Job and Family Services, and she said, you know, see you when I get home, honey. And she came home and he didn't answer, and he was already dead for hours. And it was because of, he was doing dirty 30s. Next slide, please. So this is where I said that there's a little bit of blood. This guy's alive. He's just on meth. Anybody from the 937? Woo! Yeah, do you have one? Does it come standard issue down there? So they called me for this guy that was at the hospital. And the big thing is that until the drugs wear off, there's not a whole lot I could do with them when they're on drugs like that. But this guy was convinced that there was something in his ear. So then he started digging at his ear and digging at his ear, digging at his ear, to the point to where I had to take a picture of it. I said, bro, I looked in there and there ain't nothing in there. He said, give me a mirror. I was like, I'm not giving you anything. You'll probably stab me with the pieces of it, you know? So I said, I'm going to take a picture with my phone, and I'm going to hold my phone. I'm going to show you there's nothing in your ear. We've had all kinds of crazy experiences with meth.
Garrett's going to share one story
about
an incident he had when he was on the road, but like I wanted to point out why that is. So have you ever heard like of meth bugs, or you've seen people with like sores on their face and things like that from digging? Like when someone uses meth, they become hypersensitive and they can feel the flaps in your blood vessels. They can feel that, and they think that there's bugs under their skin.
Yeah, they pick at them. So, and then the other thing that you can look at is sometimes people have dots in a line. Those dots in a line, that's just because they're trying to hit veins in different spots. If they collapse certain veins over time, then they have to get creative in shooting up. So, tell us about your meth story, Garrett.
So not only do they get itchy, but they get like that superhuman strength's real. We had a traffic stop early in the morning, and we're talking to him. We had a CI in the car. We knew he had about 70 grams of meth in there, and we couldn't find it. So we started talking to him, and we got it out of him that he ate it. And 70 grams of meth is enough to kill most of us in this room, but he's an avid user. So he went from fine. I'm like, I'm going to get you checked out. He's talking to us normal. I put him in the back of my cruiser, and as I'm driving to the hospital, he just goes to a whole nother planet. Not speaking any English, banging his head. In the back of my cruiser is a metal plate, a divider, a cage, and he was wearing flip-flops, and he shoved his feet so far under that cage that he ripped all of his toenails off. So I get to the hospital. I'm driving lights and sirens now because he's going, I don't know what's going on. I get him out. I fight with him all the way in. There's like probably 6 or 7 of us holding him down. I'm on top of him with all my body weight, and there's 6 other cops trying to hold him down, and he's still getting off this gurney. The hospital has what they call like a B-52 shot. It knocks most people out in one. They gave him 3 of those, and he was still fighting us. He never actually went to sleep. How he survived, we still don't know. And he's, our wonderful court system, he got out on probation last week, so.
Yeah. Yeah, that was pretty interesting.
Like it was bizarre looking at his toenails. He ripped all of them off.
So he ended,
I felt it later, but.
We're gonna head into questions and answers, and we also want to make sure that we leave time for everybody. If you want Narcan, I have Narcan. Just there's a quick sheet. I need your name and phone number on it, just in case it's recalled. I really don't care if you give me accurate information. It's just something that they make me fill out. I would rather it be in the hands of the people that need it than riding around in my car. So. Yeah. Yeah. So let's open up to questions. So I know that that's a lot. I know that it's kind of all around, but like you guys have full courses on drugs and you know, we're trying to hit it in just you know, an hour and a half. So. We're killing it. Go ahead, fella.
When you, I don't need the mic. Got it. Nice smile. When you're watching a drug deal, where do you like to sit or watch? Just interested.
All around. We want to Garrett likes to dress up like a cop. Ropes. This is not I'm just trying to find this. Close to information is what I'm moving back to.
Yep, we got regular cars. We've, yep.
Close enough to see what's going on, close enough to
Yeah.
we all are seeing over, like, if something goes south, we get the break to say, and if they say that break, they
Yeah. We sit around like guardian angels, and then we wait for the buy to happen, and then they walk away. Because if we bust them, they yell the code word, or if we bust the bad guy right away, your snitch is burned. And that's bad for business. You know, people aren't going to work for us if we're burning our snitches. And the other thing about snitches is they're hard to work anyways. Like, you've got all these people that don't want jobs anyways, and they're not working at McDonald's, or they're not going to the factories, and they just want to do drugs and, you know, deal drugs all day. We got a limited supply of confidential informants, and we need to protect them. Good question. Go ahead.
You said for the buy and walk that you arrested the guy the third time because it was too much money that he wanted. How many times do you guys usually do buy and walk before you arrest the person?
Go ahead.
That's an investigation.
Not everybody gets busted on the third time. Sometimes it takes us a long time to get our drugs back. Yeah. Yeah.
More often than not, we want to be a lot of us. With that specific case, it's more money than what we were comfortable with walking away. We were hovering around the $7,000 ballpark, and I don't typically run it without going to figure it along with.
And the other thing is that he was the undercover cop in that scenario. We weren't burning a confidential informant. He was the buyer, so we weren't burning a snitch at that point. So that kind of plays into things. So, but for the most part, we like to put distance between the buys, getting the lab results back. It takes a couple months to get the labs back from BCI. We do have a device called an MX908, which allows us to test stuff right away. But we're only testing meth and coke with that typically.
Fentanyl and using that every day, so it kind of got to the point where the case was better served to be done picked up versus necessarily quickly identifying the source of supply, and it worked out in our favor because he wanted to provide us the information we needed, but it kind of got to the point with that guy where it was better for everybody himself and for us in that case.
Well, and that's the other thing is that if they're going to kill somebody else or themselves, we're not going to work them, because that's pretty crappy of us if, well, you know, one hand you're pushing treatment, but the other hand it's just like, buy us drugs. That's pretty crappy, and we know that that's not how you play the game. So I don't work confidential informants because I'm like the overdose treatment guy. These guys will work informants to the degree that if it depends on their charges. If they're bad off addicts, they just flip them to me and we don't work them. We don't cross that because life is more important than drugs all day. So what's a case compared to a life? So it's nothing. Good question.
What do you feel is the most misunderstood aspect of your job?
So I just went out and stuff
Yeah.
Cop work is 7 hours of paperwork and meetings for about 13 minutes long. All cop work is all cop work is all kind of paperwork, and writing, sitting around reading for 5 minutes. Don't go that far.
For every one bad cop, there's 150 good ones. So like everything else, one individual is for everybody. But that's around out of the day, that's most of the day. There's a whole lot of good cops that are here to serve a purpose versus the one that's a dick and ruins it for everybody.
It happens. There's good doctors and bad doctors, good teachers, bad teachers. Yeah. Go ahead.
First of all, I say thank you for what you do for your community.
Thank you.
Second of all, thank you for sharing your story. I work for a nonprofit here in our community, Welcome to New Life. We do an elementary program that helps with underpaid as well as resources for adults that are part of the criminal justice system but wanting to change their life. So like you. And so I appreciate not only you sharing your story, but also sharing with these individuals that are addicted, arguments.
Mm-hmm.
Someone's son, daughter, mother, father. And so I do appreciate it.
I appreciate that. We definitely believe in getting people help. There's someone to somebody. Absolutely. Anybody else?
Time for maybe one more question.
Sure.
I got a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Your resources, right? You got this cash. Where's that coming from? Counties don't have a lot of money, in my experience.
We don't spend that dollars. So a lot of the money we're spending on drugs is left all the way is other money that we've seized, right? So when we service one, oftentimes we'll be going forward. The pictures of cash, we see that on the search warrant. And a lot of times we get our own money back. So anytime we need to buy, we record the serial numbers off the bill because if we get a house later and find that serial number, it's kind of hard to say, like, maybe that money worth. I can tell you unequivocally, I bought drugs from you with that money. I hear the bill, and I can afford it. So a lot of times we do that when we'll pay money. And we get donations from political subdivisions in our county. But more often than not, the money that we have in our confidential fund is the money that we seized on drug dealers.
Cars, guns, we can sell that stuff. Or what?
Guns, we work at guns for our department. We bought those with, I think we counted that when it confiscated close to 40 guns and traded it with about
They sit in evidence until the case is over, and then you destroy them.
Could you repeat that question a little louder?
What do you do with the drugs when you confiscate them?
What do you do with the drugs when we confiscate them? Their case has to be completely finished, and even their time has to be set.
So there's a rule when we're allowed to destroy evidence. Somebody has the case has to be completed, has gone through the entire judicial process, and that person has to be carried out the entire sentence. We tack on an additional 30 days to do that. So let's say somebody's arrested and there's an extra degree at the prison generally for which is normal probation, whatever. That's fairly another 2 to 3 years. So often we'll sit on drugs for 7 years before we're able to destroy it. Minimize the sentence. Someone could go
Yeah, take it to foundry, crematory, whatever. Stick it in there with grandma.
So I think we want to give you some time here if folks want to have get some Narcan, but also to see the paraphernalia that you
please.
brought.
All the drugs are safe.
Yep.
So we allow at least 10, 15 minutes for
Yeah,
that. but,
we're sticking around. And then I've also got some merch. I don't give you guys the pop-its at the beginning because I just know you guys will pop them the whole time, so.
But before anybody leaves, let's give these gentlemen a round of applause for coming.
Thank you. We're honored to be here. Thank you guys very much. Come up and see us.